Did I ever tell you that Halloween was actually one of my favorite holidays? Yeah, it is. For a lot of reasons. Yeah. Next to it, I love the 4th of July. Love firecrackers. Love barbecue. I love this country. And so I really like living here. If it hadn't been for the American Revolution, I don't know what it would have been like, But anyway, it's a good place. Lived here all my life. Well, so 4th of July is okay. Thanksgiving, well, I think the story is pretty bogus, but the idea of giving thanks for what you have, always good. Never hear me complain about Thanksgiving, and even though turkey doesn't digest too well with me, I like most of the rest of the grub, and eating's always been a favorite of mine. Mom taught me how to make Thanksgiving dinners as a boy. I used to do that, and participation in a thing. So I kind of like Thanksgiving, Oh, on the other hand, I'm really conflicted over Easter and Christmas because, obviously, for those of you who are historical and you read back to see how things happen, that, both Christmas and Easter are just basically ancient pagan rituals that have been wallpapered over by the church with a thin layer of Christianity, and the pagan ritual things keep popping out like bunnies, eggs, this is fertility cults, or flying reindeers and Santa Claus, which is probably Siberian shamans and the magic mushrooms they used to distribute. There's an analog, man. You look at the Siberian shamans used to wear red and white. They rode around in sleighs. They were pulled by reindeers, and they'd carry a big bag of Amanita muscaria mushrooms, which they would then, I suppose, either sell or give to the villagers in Siberia during the winter times. And oftentimes the doors were snowed under on these residents because of Siberia, so they'd come down the smoke hole. And so, a guy in a red and white suit with reindeers comes down the smoke hole, and he's handing out mushrooms that'll stone you out. And, of course the reindeers fly. We feed the mushrooms, right? So, really what we're looking at is this whole ancient Northern European pagan thing that, got veneered over, and it's like whatever they put over the top of it isn't strong enough, and it keeps popping out on us. So it's conflicting. Yeah, I find it very conflicted. But then, of course, the United States, our businesses helped to turn this into the capitalist corporate feeding frenzy known as Black Friday. Till it's like, see if we can get as much of anything as possible, which is, kind of gross too. So I'm not big on that stuff. But Halloween, oh man, love Halloween. Yeah. Now, it's true. I'm not real big on costumes. My mom used to make us clown costumes, and she sewed the things by hand. She'd do our faces up and everything and all that when we were kids, and I was always just a little bit embarrassed because I wanted to be something terrifying. Nowadays, clowns are terrifying. Now, if it had, give me another 50 years over the dam, and, well, I'd have been happy about that because I'm a horror clown, but not back then. At best, clowns like Emmett Kelly were tearful, Yeah. But the candy was good. And that was back before people put razor blades and needles and LSD and now fentanyl and stuff. It was a nutty world. We used to get homemade popcorn balls, we'd take apples and stuff. We got all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of homemade stuff back in those days. And that was all the corporate stuff, the Hershey bars, it was all good. It's all good. Loved it. Well, then, as time goes on, though, I'm not a guy who grew up or with any sorts of paranormal or mystical traditions or anything like that. In my background, my family were, on one end over there, they were Episcopalians, and they built the first church of Winnetka. On the other end, they were pretty much all atheists. They didn't have any rituals or anything that they dealt with. It was, And so I just don't have that kind of background. Anything that have to do with spiritualism or anything mystical happened while I went to a Christian school for 8 years as a boy. We talked about things like life after death, the soul, things that you couldn't touch, things you could never get to. It was only later in life that, for some reason, all those things that either people plain don't believe in or kind of unsure about, right? Like ghosts, this stuff started happening to me, and it started assaulting me. It's 1965, first UFO sighting. After that, I've seen dozens, and some at very close range, people. I used to read stories about aliens, in the magazines, Betty and Barney Hill's abduction, read it in Look magazine or something. And there'd be stories out there about ghosts, and hauntings, and I used to find that pretty interesting as a kid. And I guess I picked, some of it up that way, but mostly it was not in my background. But then life just started pushing it down my throat. I really believe in ghosts at all when I found myself living in a rather intensely haunted house. And after a while, you have to accept it. You can't, what are you going to do? Stuff moves on its own, that's all there is to it. It happens a lot. I lived in a couple more later, and then found as a youth that I seemed to have had a knack for being a Geiger counter for spirits, because I could just come to the front door of a building and I could tell you it was haunted. I didn't have to go inside. Sometimes entering was even very difficult for me to do. The physical feelings of entering those spaces was hard. But all that crazy stuff I talk about, paranormal junk and weird creatures that run around in the dark and so on, these are not things that I grew up believing in. They were hard for me to believe. Yeah. I almost was forced by life into a situation where I could not deny anymore. I just had to accept. Over time, I realized that I had quite a few good stories to tell. And I used to do this on Halloween, especially if we had Halloween gigs, we'd be in the car traveling, and so maybe the band leader would go, "Hey, Bill, tell us some of your ghost stories." And yeah, all right. I remember they made me stop one time because the lady singer was about to soil her clothing. She was so scared from this story. So I realized, I really enjoyed this, and it turned that, we all have a light and a dark side. Fortunately, a lot of us, depending on what your belief systems are, don't deal with your dark sides. You hide them. You try to make them go away. You don't think they exist, which is dangerous. It's very dangerous because there are psychological repercussions to trying to push part of yourself down and keep it there. So I realized I had a dark side, and I got comfortable with it. I gave it a good room in my mind to live in. I gave it good stories and stuff to keep it active and not let it build up pressure, so like a pressure cooker to boil over and I go out and do a mass shooting or something. No, I got a whole room in my mind, that's full of sharp objects, dangerous stuff, deadly poisons, swastikas, you name it. Everything dark lives in there. And as long as I give it enough reality and time, and it's kind of the yin-yang, of the Tao, that everything's gray. You got the white and the dark and the Korean flag or in the Tao song, but that's one thing. That's not two things. That's one thing. That's kind of the way I see it. So I began to enjoy Halloween, more so than almost any other time as a holiday, because it was the time I got to exercise my dark side. Most of the time I'm pretty smiley. I'm a pretty decent guy, and, I'm generally fairly generous and kind, and I take in stray cats occasionally, so Gracie got here and so on. But my husbandry is with my animals and plants, but that's the rest of me. Life created stories for me. I didn't have to think these up. And so, one of the major focus topics in Halloween, really, other than ghosts and monsters, are witches. Witches have really been very, very much historically. If we trace back the history of Halloween, I guess that probably most of the historians will say it originated in Ireland. They used to carve turnips and little faces on them in a candle, put them in the window, and face it out during the period of time when the darkness comes in the land, the days get short. It was supposed to, I guess, help drive the evil forces away from the house, I guess. I'd got here with the immigrants for sure into this country, and the turnip turned into a pumpkin, and there's a whole other story also about the trick-or-treat and the candy and all that stuff. So y'all can look it up if you want to. It's long. But it has evolved continuously, whereas some things get frozen in time, not Halloween. Halloween is just kept moving right along and changing its shape constantly and what it does and what it means. But at the core of it is still boo, things that terrify you in general. These days it's clowns. But witches are still around, right? Do we still see witch costumes? I bet. Yeah. We all have the kind of Wizard of Oz, idea of what a witch looks like. Halloween has been almost created in its images by Hollywood. But I would ask, how many of you out there have actually ever encountered a witch? That's a question. I think most people think that's a lot of hooey. I know living in the Midwest, we had in Wisconsin a really large contingent of what we call Wicca. Now, these are not the Halloween witches per se. Most of the people involved in Wicca are, more herbal practitioners, light spells. They do white magic spells, midwives and so on, kind of actually sort of very much the traditional European idea, I guess, very much so. And they're all kind of, there's a lot of them are women. There are men too, but most of them that I've met are women, and they're they don't wear a lot of makeup, kind of hippie-looking girls sometimes, real organic-looking people, generally. Pretty organic-looking people. They're not particularly scary, but there are other witches. Yeah, there are witches that associate to the darkness. The reality of the world is pretty much how you feel about it. And I was stupid about witches, all right? All I had was the Hollywood image, pointed nose, funny hat. So as a young man, I really didn't believe in that kind of junk. It was only later I met Wicca, and even later yet I met the native shamans, which, not exactly witches, but powerful. But at the time when I was young, 17 to 20 years old, I guess, right in there. Pretty naive. And, I tell you what, I couldn't tell a witch from Marilyn Monroe when I was a boy, And girls who were attractive and seemed to be interested in me, hey, I used to date them. Yeah, and then in a couple of cases there, I became rather deeply attached to. Well, only later to find out that these ladies had covered the fact that they were deep into black magic. Deep. Black candles, spells, incantations, magic symbols, demonic possession. Yeah. Yeah, so I actually had met a girl while I was in high school that she was pretty good to look at, but there was something about her I could not resist. Yeah, just had a draw. Later on, it turns out that what she'd done is she'd had her eye on me for whatever reason, and she literally had cast a spell. And later on the falling out of the situation, the repercussions for me were horrible. Don't ever let people put spells on you. Trust me, don't do it. It's never been good in my life at all. Wouldn't say I understand all of it, but it's bad news. Yeah, so this girl was attractive, and well, we hung for quite a while as an item. Well, one day, I had noticed a few odd things, like we downtown in Chicago in the Loop for some reason or another, and I'd have the weirdest people coming up off the sidewalks. I mean, Chicago's got a few strange guys, but some of these guys were on another level and would come up and say, "Oh, what a beautiful couple," strange things. And apparently she knew them. Okay, I didn't know that. They were part of the group that she associated with, and I guess it was maybe she'd drag me by them, get me checked out. I don't know. I believe she wanted me to join what she was doing eventually, but I was repulsed once I found out, because the time that she fessed up and she showed me what she could do and why, and so she disclosed the fact that she belonged to a church that did satanic rituals and believed in demonic magic and so on. I don't recall what it was called anymore, but well, that was kind of a shock. All right, but then I guess to prove it to me that it wasn't any hooey, she went ahead and she had me sit cross-legged facing her as she sat cross-legged, looking at each other. And she reached out and she touched my forehead. I guess it'd be sort of the spot we refer to as the third eye, It's the pineal gland area. Anyway, she touched this. Man, weird, because as soon as she touched it, it was as if somebody opened up a movie camera and I watched my life rolling before my eyes. Yeah, she started something in motion, and she kind of started at just about the current moment. And she started to tell me things that no one, hardly anybody rather, should ever know about. That was the point, I guess. I had recently, with musical members that I'd worked with for years and years, and I just kind of had it with a couple of the guys just fighting all the time, and I just told them, I'm done. Now, they were very upset. They didn't want to lose me. They tried to make me stay, and I ended up basically in this circle of band members, people kind of pointing fingers at me because I want to quit it. And so I ended up going through that. Well, this is what comes to my mind as she is speaking, and she speaks it all out. She describes the situation. She cannot tell me what it is that the people are concerned about, but you can see that this situation. And of course, it's just been the band members, and I never told anybody else about this. And so, obviously, this woman's doing a real reading. She's pulling stuff out of my head that nobody should know. Well, continues, and she starts moving forward in a timeline, going into the future, places I have never been. She starts describing things, but as she starts moving inward, what's happening is that things are becoming increasingly symbolic, whereas the band thing, which had happened, was pretty much a video. But as we move forward, it all starts to get locked in symbols, and she explained to me that is not very normal, that most people's stuff is right there. You could read it. She says, I can't really read yours. It's all symbolic. And she says, all I can give you is the symbols. And so she started telling me what she saw again. Well, one of the things that really stuck with me, I have probably forgotten a lot of what she said, but one of the things was that I see myself, I'm in a dirty, dingy, dark, gray, urban setting, and I'm having anxiety. I'm seeking something, and I find myself going down through these corridors of big gray buildings, and it's pretty ugly where I'm at, and I keep going and going, and then all of a sudden I hit a wall. It's like a brick wall, and I'm doing this, and I'm going down the wall with my hands, and I'm searching and searching, and finally I find a loose brick, and I pull the brick out of the wall, and I pull a few more out, and I create a hole large enough in this wall to crawl through. And once I crawl through, I find myself in an open meadow full of flowers, and I'm happy, and I find myself dancing off through a meadow, singing and picking flowers, and that was it. That was as far as anything went that she could read. Well, that vision didn't make a lot of sense to me at maybe 18 years old. So, yeah, and again, it was all in symbols. There was nothing actually there. Well, time went on. Of course, I never forgot what she said. Time went on. I found myself in an urban setting, sick to death and tired of what I was having to do there, the commute into Chicago and the hustle and the bustle and the money and the power, and I just got tired of it. And so I found myself a way to get out of it, and I bought a farm in Wisconsin. But that wasn't the end of it, because then it kept moving and moving and moving until finally I reached a point here where I'm living in Hawaii, surrounded by flowers. I have made my way completely out of that urban junk, through the hole in the wall that I created by pulling the bricks out, to find myself here on the Green Garden Guy's farm. Happy? Yeah, most of the time I'm happy as a clam. I'm free. I don't pay for energy. I own the real estate. It's just, I get up every morning, and what do? I dance around singing through fields of flowers, because I can be heard singing to myself out here. I don't dance very well, but, I'm stepping around out there. Yeah, it happened. And she couldn't tell me what it was, because it was locked in symbol. But as time went on, there it was. It actually occurred. So what this woman had found was incredible. Well, in the background of all of this, somewhere I could feel a tremendous darkness that upset me badly. We had discussions, and she made the claim that the power she used was, drawn from a certain demon. Okay, and that was where she got this from. And I said, well, thank you very much. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and bye. I'm out of here. Yeah, never went back. Never thought about her again. Thought about what happened, but that was about it. Yeah. Well, then stupidly I move on into another relationship again, and this lady was again quite beautiful and rather irresistible. And well, pretty soon I began to realize, she had like black candles laid out in her bedroom and all this queer stuff, that this woman was also into something dark. And I was sitting at the breakfast table with her one morning, and there was a spider that showed up on the screen, a large one, pretty good size, maybe a golden garden or something. Anyway, was walking up the screen. She turned around, she saw it, and she says, "Ugh, spiders. I hate spiders. I'd wish they'd all die." The damn thing crumpled up into a ball, dropped dead, and fell off the screen right before my eyes. And I didn't even finish my breakfast. I excused myself, and I never came back, and I never called. I never did anything again. I was out of there. Because this stuff terrifies me. It does, because it is real. It's real. I don't know how it's real or why it's real, or, I'm not a superstitious type of person. I'm not a mystical guy either. I'm always looking for a scientific type of an explanation for things that occur. I may have a few, but anyway, that was my experience with witches. Since then, I have run across some fairly powerful individuals, but they were more in what we would call shamans, which is different again. And maybe I'll talk about them again in the future. They could be almost as frightening, depending. Yeah, it depends. But anyway, I would like to hear from people out there on the channel that have experiences, actual experiences with meeting witches, and Wicca too. Let me know, because I'll tell you, till I met those two women, it's all bunk. It was just bunk, Well, they almost got me going back to church again, because if the dark had that much power, I think I want to stand in the light. But, well, life's changed. I have different viewpoints on that yet today, too. So, hang loose, folks. Aloha.